By now, you are probably aware of the fact that our testosterone levels are dropping like crazy. I don't have the latest statistics memorized from my mind what the exact numbers are. But you hear things like we have half the testosterone levels that our grandfathers used to have when they were our age. And it's absolutely crazy, right? You can look up the statistics and you can see that it's just going down. And it continues to go down from here on. But despite the fact that we have this growing awareness of people being aware that this is happening, people actually caring about that it's happening to them and to society, we still have so many things in our daily lives, things that we touch, things that we breathe, things that we eat and drink, that just keep lowering our testosterone levels. Things that most guys keep doing on a daily basis, even the guys that care, because we simply don't know about it and it's simply everywhere in our life. I've already made a previous video, talking a bit about the things that we touch and that we breathe on a daily basis that lower our testosterone levels. In this video, we are going to go a bit more into depth specifically on the things that we put in our mouth, the things that we eat and that we drink, because obviously this is a big one as well. Now, this is not just going to be one of those lists where I say, okay guys, soy and this and that, avoid these foods, good luck. No, we're actually going to go a bit more into depth and also talk about things that you might haven't thought about, which is the way that we store our food, the containers, and the way that we prepare our food, the mistakes that we make with storing and cooking our food, because this is pretty big as well. But let's just start with the obvious one. Soy. This is probably the first food that comes to your mind when you think about testosterone and estrogen, right? A food that messes up your hormones. This food, this single food, literally turned into a meme. The thought that if you consume too much soy, you turn into a soy boy. It raises your estrogen levels, it lowers your testosterone. Now, before we go into the details of whether or not soy is actually that bad for you, I'm going to give you like a tiny explanation of how this stuff really works. So, plants, not all plants, but some plants contain something that is called phytoestrogens, which essentially just means plant estrogens. It's a chemical that essentially looks the same as estrogen. It technically isn't literally estrogen, but it's sort of the same as estrogen. And it kind of also works like estrogen in our bodies, meaning that it binds in the estrogen receptors. It sort of tricks our body into thinking that it's estrogen. And so our body responds to that as if it's estrogen, with all the side effects of getting too much estrogen in your body. And one of them is the fact that your testosterone drops, because for some reason that's just what our body does. Whenever estrogen goes up, testosterone drops. And so when we consume a lot of estrogen or fake estrogens in the form of plant, aka phytoestrogen, or fake plastic estrogens, those are called the xenoestrogens, our body lowers its testosterone levels. Soy is one of these foods that contains a bunch of phytoestrogens. And so what happens is, it has an estrogenic effect in our body. Now, soy is an interesting one because this is a bit of a controversial one, right? This is the one that turned into a meme, right? Some people are very convinced that soy is like, oh, that's the worst thing you can eat. But at the same time, there are people, particularly the fans of soy, that say, no, this is actually a myth. And there is actually scientific evidence that shows us that soy isn't that bad. It doesn't really raise your estrogen that much. It doesn't really drop your testosterone that much. So you guys were wrong. You should have trusted the science, because the science tells us that it's not so bad. So let me try to explain to you guys what is going on here without wasting too much time going into depth about how science works. But it's kind of important to have like a basic understanding of how this stuff works. I don't mean to brag or anything, but I studied nutrition, so I have a fair understanding of how studies like this in the field of nutrition are done, and I think that I can provide you guys with a basic explanation. This is the thing. Whenever a scientific study, particularly in the fields of nutrition and medicine, tells you that something is not that bad or something is safe, you need to ask yourself the question, okay, what is their criterion of safe or not that bad? Because what does that really mean? You need to take a look at the actual scientific study, because not that bad or safe doesn't necessarily mean that it has no effects at all. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually healthy for you, right? There are plenty of things, food additives and medicines, and I'm not going to go too much into depth on this one because YouTube doesn't like it, but even vaccines, where they say, well, this is completely safe, but safe doesn't actually mean that it has no ill health effects. It just means that you don't get a spontaneous tumor, you don't get like a heart attack, you don't spontaneously develop autism, but it might actually do something bad in the long term. It might actually give you a little bit of cancer. It might actually ruin your hormones a little bit. A very similar thing is going on with the studies surrounding soy. Now, first of all, literally all of these studies are always funded by the corporations that benefit from selling the thing. All of these studies that say that soy is not that bad are funded by the companies selling you soy. They are the ones that fund a bunch of scientists so that the scientists then make up a study where the scientists say, well, yeah, we looked at people that ate a bunch of soy and we gave a bunch of soy to rats, and yeah, their estrogen might have raised a little bit and the testosterone might have dropped a little bit, but we think it's not that bad. It was only a little bit, right? And technically they're right. I mean, they can't make up a completely crappy study where their testosterone completely plummeted. Whenever they make a study like that and then they say, well, it wasn't that bad, and then other scientists are going to call it out. So technically it wasn't that bad, but it's still changed a bit, right? Do you think it's that bad? Because we also have like half the testosterone levels that our grandfathers used to have. And they also tell us, well, it's not that bad. It's still the healthy range, right? Well, you can make up your own mind about this. You can look up the studies yourself and you can see whether you agree with the criterion of the scientists that were funded by the soy industry or not. But I personally, I do probably think it's worse than the scientists are trying to tell me. I do think it's bad that we have half the testosterone levels as our ancestors used to have, and that they call it healthy. I do think that's bad. I do think it's bad if we have a food that lowers our testosterone a bit, right? Because it's one of the many foods. It's one of the many things that we have in our life. It's not just soy, but it's all the other factors as well. All the things I talked about in my previous video as well. All these things added together. And soy is just one of the things that contributes to it. It's just an objective fact, right? So whenever the scientists tell me, well, this one, it's not that bad. You can consume some soy and it's going to be fine. I don't really care that much about their opinion. Soy objectively increases your estrogen and lowers your testosterone, and that is a fact. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to freak out whenever you see some soy. If you are over for dinner at a friend and he serves you a block of tofu, it's not the end of the world, right? It probably isn't that bad, like the scientists say. It's not the end of the world. You can eat a block of tofu and you will be relatively fine. You can go out to your favorite sushi place and eat some soy sauce without it being the end of the world, especially soy sauce, because that's fermented, so it's actually lower in the phytoestrogens. But just, don't turn into the literal soy boy who stops eating his steaks and then he eats soy several nights a week. If that's who you are, then yeah, it probably is going to have an effect. Don't freak out if you eat it every now and then. To be honest, apart from soy sauce, I don't see why you would ever eat it, because tofu isn't that good. But don't freak out if you eat it every now and then. Just don't be that literal soy boy that eats it every day. Another big one, and this one might come as a bit of a surprise to some people: flax seeds. Now, some of you guys are probably thinking, Rob, what kind of a weird niche food is that? I never even heard of flax seeds. Who even eats flax seeds, right? Well, actually, they put flax seeds in more and more products these days, like breads. So it's really something to look out for. I'll get to that in a minute. But there also are a lot of people who consume a lot of flax seeds right now because they think, well, it's actually true, they have learned that flax seeds contain a lot of good fatty acids, which are the omega-3 fatty acids. Now, I'm not going to go too much into depth why you would want to consume more omega-3 fatty acids, but it's true. In our modern lifestyle, we eat too much of the so-called omega-6 fatty acids. We should try to bring omega-6 down and perhaps increase omega-3 fatty acids. Flax seeds happen to be a food that are very rich in omega-3 fatty acids. So they seem like a very healthy food from that perspective, and they've become a bit of a growing trend where people start eating more flax seeds. Now, this sounds great and all, but what most people don't realize is that flax seeds also happen to be one of the, if not literally the one, most estrogenic foods on this planet. The amount of phytoestrogens in flax seeds is absolutely sickening. If you want to get your omega-3s, don't eat the flax seeds. Eat avocados, eat healthy animal products, get a high quality fish oil. Don't eat the flax seeds. Now, I just said that there's this sort of trend going on where production companies put the flax seeds in a lot of products, in a lot of carby products primarily. Breads, cookies, toasts, things like this. So whenever you eat a carby product, before you buy it, look on the ingredients and make sure that there aren't any flax seeds in there. Again, if you have your favorite little bread from your favorite baker and there's a few flax seeds on the top of it, don't freak out. You can eat that stuff once every so often. Just make sure that you don't do it all the time. Don't consume a bread that contains flax seeds like every day. That's probably going to take a toll on your hormones. Perhaps you shouldn't eat bread every day anyway, but that's another topic for a video. Have you ever enjoyed a nice fresh cup of mint tea? The fancy tea with the actual leaves, and then people put the honey inside of it, right? There's a bit of a joke going on where people say that that's not a manly drink, right? I've seen situations where a guy ordered a mint tea and then other guys would laugh and say, you're ordering a mint tea. Isn't that a girly drink? Isn't that what women drink? Now, these people making these jokes, they didn't know it, but they were actually right, because yep, mint is one of these foods that contains a lot of phytoestrogens. This one's probably worse than we think. There's some scientific studies There are some studies that look at populations in, I believe, Turkey, because Turkish people like their mint tea. And they actually saw that the people that drink more mint tea had higher estrogen, lower testosterone levels. There was this one study they did in rats where they gave the rats mint tea. They didn't give them mint, but they gave them actual mint tea, which is kind of funny in my opinion, because that doesn't make a lot of sense from a scientific context. But they gave them mint tea, and these rats had such a drop in testosterone that they lost their libido. They had no lust anymore. It was just destroyed by drinking nothing else than mint tea. Another tea to look out for in particular is called rooibos. I don't even know if you guys in other countries have that tea, because it's a very Dutch word, and I believe that it's from South Africa, and here in the Netherlands we have rooibos tea because South Africa used to be a colony of the Netherlands. But if you have rooibos tea in your country, make sure to avoid it for the same reasons. And if you're thinking right now, wow, that sounds like dangerous stuff, I need to be careful with what teas I drink, Rob, which teas are safe? Fresh ginger tea. You know, where you take the actual ginger root and you cut it into slices. And if you're a true king, you use a mortar and pestle, so you squeeze the juices out and then you drink it extra strong. Fresh ginger tea is not only safe, but fresh ginger tea actually increases your testosterone. So if you want to boost your hormones, you give your girlfriend a fresh cup of mint tea so that she gets very nice wide hips and a thick ass. And then you enjoy a fresh cup of ginger tea yourself so that you may become more masculine. Actually, I say this as a joke, but don't do this, because women are also severely affected by consuming too much estrogen or fake estrogens, and it's really having a bad effect on our health as well, on women's health as well. There are girls that hit puberty at like 9 years old. More and more women become infertile. It increases your chances to get cancer. It affects your mood, your motivation, your libido, etc. Definitely protect the women in your life from excessive estrogen exposure as well. Preferably don't give the missus a cup of mint tea either. Again, don't freak out if she drinks a cup of mint tea every now and then. Just make sure that she doesn't do it regularly. And if you want to increase her mood and make sure that she gets a higher libido, then give her a cup of fresh ginger tea. Because increasing testosterone in women also increases their libido. Beer. Now that is a masculine drink, isn't it? Mint tea was the feminine drink, but beer, that's what men drink. Bad news. Hops. You know the ingredient that they use in practically all beers that exist right now? It's the ingredient they use to give it that bitter, fruity, fresh flavor. Hops are very estrogenic. Contains a lot of phytoestrogens. Not much else I can say about it. Don't drink too much beer. Obviously, you shouldn't be drinking too much beer anyway, because it contains alcohol, and alcohol isn't that good for you. I'm not here to sit and judge or preach about just how bad alcohol is for you. I think most of you guys know that drinking too much alcohol isn't that good for you. If you want to maximize your testosterone while drinking some alcohol, then don't drink too much beer. Drink something else. Whiskey. Whiskey doesn't contain hops, and whiskey is a very masculine drink. So enjoy a nice whiskey instead. Now, I personally actually drink some beer. I might drink like 1 or 2 beers on a Friday evening on a date night with my girlfriend. Not every Friday, but like every other week, like twice a month or something. It's not the end of the world. Again, I keep saying this, don't freak out if you drink 1 beer every now and then. But if you drink several beers several nights a week, then yeah, it probably is going to have some effect. You might want to switch to another alcoholic drink instead, like a whiskey, or even better, just don't drink the alcohol at all. Because alcohol itself also has some effect on testosterone. Water. Now this one gets a bit depressing. I don't want you to freak out too much. But there is no water that we can drink that doesn't contain any estrogen. We have bottled water, which comes in plastic bottles, and so that contains the xenoestrogens, the plastic estrogens that seep into the water from the bottle. So then we think, well, tap water then, right? Doesn't come in plastic, right? But the thing with tap water is that water gets recycled, and people, particularly women who use birth control pills, right, which is estrogen, they pee out the estrogen, the birth control pills. It gets into the sewage water, it gets into the drinking water, and it then comes back into the filtration installations. However, the water filtration systems cannot filter these tiny particles like hormones and also old people medicine, which is kind of disgusting as well. And so it gets back into the drinking water, and so our tap water contains old people piss medicine and women birth control estrogen hormones. Our drinking water literally, I have some over here, it literally contains estrogen from women's piss and medicines from old people piss. Enjoy. The truth is, no one really knows which one is worse. Should we drink bottled water? Should we drink tap water? It kind of depends on where you live. You know, some drinking water is of significantly better quality than other drinking water. We don't really know, but there are some things that you can do. If you are rich and you have the availability of glass bottles, you can buy water that comes in glass bottles. But this is not a very realistic option because it's kind of expensive. And to be honest, my supermarket doesn't even sell water in glass bottles. So it's not something that's realistic for everyone. You can install a so-called reverse osmosis filter on your tap. Now, I am not an expert on this. I don't actually have a reverse osmosis filter myself, but apparently a reverse osmosis filter can do a pretty good job at filtering out the tiny particles like hormones. Apparently it can really reduce the estrogen that is in our tap water by a significant percentage. So that's something you can do. And also, I'd say just use common sense and try to not make things worse than they already are, because people do that stuff. I see people doubling down on their estrogen. I see people using tap water, which already contains estrogen, and then they put it in a plastic bottle. And they take their plastic bottle around to work or to the gym, right? You're doubling up on that stuff. You're taking water that already has estrogen and then you're putting it into the plastic bottle so that it gets even more estrogen. This is very simple to prevent. All that you have to do is you buy a metal or a glass bottle. Problem's fixed. Another thing that's very important to know is that plastic starts to release a particularly high amount of xenoestrogens into the water or food, whatever is in the plastic, whenever it gets hot. So if you do have a plastic bottle, make sure that it doesn't get hot. Don't leave it in the sun. Don't leave it in the hot car. Don't buy it from a store that has the bottles lying around on a hot shelf or have been transported in a hot truck or whatever. It's kind of hard to figure all these things out, but just do as much as you can. Now, water obviously isn't the only thing that comes in plastic. Go to the store and see how much of the foods that you buy are packed in plastic, and you'll be shocked. Now, obviously, this is something that we cannot completely prevent. We cannot completely avoid. So to some extent, you're just going to have to accept it. And also, again, don't freak out too much because, you know, people have been eating foods that come in plastics for quite a while, and it's not the end of the world, but just try to minimize it as much as possible, okay? If you have the option to choose between the apples that are wrapped in a plastic foil or the apples that aren't, choose the apples that aren't wrapped in a plastic foil. Use common sense. You know, they're heating up the plastics. You know that now. So microwave meals. You know, the meals that come in a plastic bowl and then you have to put it into the microwave while it's still in the plastic. Incredibly stupid, right? You probably want to avoid these things. And if you are dependent on these things, which you shouldn't be, but if you are used to eating these things, at least take them out of the plastic bowl, put it into a glass bowl, a pottery bowl, and then put the glass bowl into the microwave or something, right? Just don't put the actual plastic in the microwave. Be mindful when storing things yourself. You know this plastic foil that we use to pack our foods? I see so many people just literally wrapping the foil around the food itself so that it's touching the food. If you are going to use this foil, put your food in a bowl so that the food doesn't reach the top of the bowl, and then put the plastic over. It's just as airtight, but now the plastic isn't touching the food. Lunchbox. Buy a lunchbox that is made out of metal or bamboo and not plastic. Other things to notice is that, for example, these are things that I just noticed personally. You know, you have like the yogurt bowls. When you buy a yogurt, it always comes in the plastic, right? Sometimes you can find like glass bottles, but it usually comes in the plastic. There's no escaping it. I buy my yogurt in the plastic buckets, plastic buckets. When you are getting out the yogurt, don't use a metal spoon to excessively scrape the bucket. You see this all the time, right? People are eating a yogurt and you can literally hear them scraping the plastic while they're taking out that last bit of yogurt. Or if you have no other option, just at least try to be careful and not scrape it too much. And if you are just at home, you know, you're not taking it to work as a lunch, but you're at home, use a little wooden spatula or buy a little silicone spatula and scrape out all the yogurt. Another one that I noticed, mixing, you know, with an electric mixer in a plastic bowl. My God, you can literally hear it, right? You can hear the mixing heads scraping the plastic bowl. And then you see this bowl afterwards, right? You inspect people's bowl and there's all this plastic that has been just scraped off the bowl, right? You are literally scraping that stuff straight into your food. So just use common sense here. Be mindful. Whenever you need to mix, don't use a plastic bowl. Buy a glass bowl, buy a pottery bowl, a metal bowl, whatever. Just don't literally scrape the plastic into your own food. And be aware of plastic cookware as well. Plastic spatulas, plastic spoons, stuff like that. People use the plastic spatulas while they're, you know, scraping their food like they're frying their eggs. And the plastic spatula is literally melting. I can't describe how often I've seen that. A spatula that was literally molten because touching the hot pan. Or people are making like a soup or a stew or whatever, and they use a plastic spoon and they keep the plastic spoon in the hot pan and they constantly stir it. And the xenoestrogens are just literally seeping into the soup. The same amount of effort that could have used a metal spoon or a wooden spoon or a wooden spatula, because you don't want to use a metal spoon when you have a Teflon pan. Don't use a Teflon pan to begin with, but again, that's another topic for another video. Metal or wood instead of plastic. It can be that simple, guys. Now, if you think that I forgot something that is very important, I might have. This stuff is everywhere and there's so much that might have not come to my mind right now. Leave it in the comments below so that everyone can see and learn from it. If you like this video, share it with a friend. That's the best thing you can do. I don't care that much about pressing the like button. Share it with a friend so that this video reaches more people that also need to hear it.